Welcome to the How To Home podcast presented by FilterBuy. I'm your host, Aaron Massey, a DIY home improvement enthusiast and full-time content creator running MrFixItDIY.com. Alongside me is my co-host, TRACY Pendergast, a home and lifestyle blogger operating her website, HeyTracy.com. Each week we'll cover the real-world ups and downs of owning a home, answer your questions, and if we don't have the answers, we'll talk to some experts to help you get the most out of your remodel, repair, and home improvement projects. So without further ado, let's start the show. Welcome to the How To Home podcast. We are joined by a very special guest right now. You may recognize him from HGTV's Design on a Dime or his extensive list of other TV credits or some of his production design work. He's a man of many hats. Ladies and gentlemen, David Scheinkoff is here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Round of applause.
Thank you.
Studio atmosphere.
It's great, though. It's nice and quiet in here.
What's new, man?
What's new? Just always juggling lots of hats and doing my general contracting, always bidding jobs and keeping guys in line and keeping my management skills as sharpened as I possibly can.
I mean, we've been kind of communicating on and off for a better part of a year or two, just via Instagram, I think. So glad that you would take the time out to join us on this.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure. I mean, it's always nice. I love doing podcasts because I find it such a great way to connect with people. And now that they film them, it's also a great avenue to show really what people are thinking.
I'm not a podcast guy, so this is kind of new for me. But, I'm really excited about the opportunity, and, it's fun.
May I say you're doing it rather well.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you. So today we're talking about DIY versus hiring out. I obviously have a DIY brand. I encourage everybody to at least have some knowledge about DIY. And if you own an old home or you own any home, really, it can be 10 minutes old. It's still going to need work. So today we're talking about what types of things a homeowner might want to consider versus when they're considering whether to do a project themselves or to hire somebody out. And I thought maybe you would have a little bit of a different perspective than me, given that you do this type of work for a living.
I mean, sure. I mean, I think one of the main things is figuring out scope. It's figuring out whether you want to do a quick remodel with some paint and some trim, if you want to get in deeper and do some cabinetry and more aesthetics, or if you want to go full bolt and do a remodel. Anything that you're doing, you always have to have your scope in mind and your budget in mind. I think if you do those two things, it's going to become a lot easier in the long run. I think people can do things themselves, especially in the age of Google and YouTube, and it's great. I mean, I do it all the time. If I want to figure out something, I'll just pop it into Google and just to get a broad sense of what something might be. But when people get in deep, sometimes they get in trouble. So, and again, if they get in deep and they get in trouble, that's when you call in the experts. The problem is, once you get in deep and you call the experts, you're generally going to be more expensive than if you had started from the beginning. Having said that, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
How do you feel about collaborating with people, like doing a hybrid project where the homeowners say, hey, we're going to do the demo, get everything prepped for you. You do this, then we want to come in and do the finishing work and kind of work as a team. Does that slow you down, or do you enjoy that collaboration?
I don't not enjoy the collaboration. It becomes a little bit of a cluster bomb when it comes to scheduling, because if I say I need that done tomorrow, they're like, oh, we just couldn't quite do it. And I've got a guy lined up that is now giving up his time for that day. What do I tell him? So that becomes a little bit of an issue, only because when I run a job as a contractor, a contractor's biggest job is to be a project manager. In most smaller contractors' worlds like mine, I am my own project manager. I find that to be probably one of my best assets when it comes to working. When people start injecting their own work into a project, it can slow down the pace. And for me, my whole job is the quicker I work, the more money I make. Mm-hmm. Besides having the client be satisfied with the work, that's the second priority, is making money. So that's basically how I feel about that.
I think that's kind of interesting, because it's something I wouldn't even think about, because if for example, you're thinking, yeah, I'm going to save some money by doing it myself, doing the demo, for example, well, you're thinking this is going to be the quality of demo you're going to get, right? It's going to be super clean. The nails are going to be out of the studs. Everything's going to be stripped down and ready for, tile drywall, whatever, your subcontractor's coming in to do. And the homeowner is just like, yeah, I knocked down some stuff, but you didn't really clean it up. You didn't do the part of the demo, the due diligence to like clean it up and get it nice. That screws you up.
Well, I think everybody, life is about perspective.
Yeah.
And one person's perspective is completely different than another person's.
Right.
I'm a detail-oriented person. Don't tell my wife, but I am. That's what I do. It's so funny. It's my guys. I find contracting to be a fine ballet. I find it, depending on how fast the job is moving, I find it to be how do I layer guys on top of guys without aggravating them to the point of them not wanting to come back that day or the next day. B, making sure that I maintain my scope of progress. And C, also the money aspect. Am I spending too much money? Am I spending it too quickly? For the most part, I always underpromise and overgive. That's what I really try to do, because to me, that's the best way to be. I'm very honest with it, and I try not to promise things that I can't achieve.
I think that's the key to any like really successful business. You never want to really overpromise and then be like, oh, well, here's what you got.
Yeah, and you'll find that, there are so many contractors out there, or I'm not going to put it just in the contractor world because I don't think that's fair. I think in any avenue of business, I think that comes up all the time where people are like, well, again, it comes down to perspective. If I have a sub that I'm using for the first time and I'm trying him out and he does something and I say, okay, well, this needs to be corrected in this, and he does it and it's still not to my liking, I can't blame him. What I consider to be a completed project is not his. Or maybe it's over what I thought. Regardless, you have to be on the same page. And I think when homeowners work with contractors, again, they have to be on the same page with quality of work, with consistency, with time frames and all that.
And I feel like the homeowners have to be on the same page with each other too, because I found that can be a little bit of an issue. Even when we were designing our kitchen together, we were sitting down with the person to design everything. And we wasted a lot of time because we both came in, my husband and I, with different expectations. And it was like, whoops, like maybe we should have talked about this a little bit more. So I think communication definitely is key with everyone involved.
Absolutely. I think communication for me is the first thing I would look for if I was trying to hire contractors. Like, how well can I communicate with this person? How receptive are they to what it is that I want? And how well do they communicate their needs back to me so that I can understand how it affects my budget or how it, will ultimately affect the project.
I have the same crew for 15 years. They come and go, but most of my main frame of guys, my electrician, my plumbers, my carpenters, who can always be flaky, they come and go, but the core is the same because of that reason.
How do you find your subs?
Oh man, that's so hard. It's so hard finding good subs. Finding good subs. It's mostly it's recommendations from other contractors or from people. We were just Tracy and I were just talking that it's gotten so expensive doing what we do nowadays. It's not just the fact that the materials are going up, which they are because of obvious reasons, but it's also the fact that the cost of living in a city such as ours, like Los Angeles, is going through the roof.
It's incredible,
and it's affecting everybody. I can't expect a guy to work for $15 an hour when he's supporting a family and he's paying $1,500 a month in rent. I can't. I have a threshold for my guys, and I keep it that way because I'm compassionate. Some of my guys, I was talking to one of my electricians that said, you're too nice. And I said, that's funny. I've never been accused of being too nice, but okay, I'll buy that for $1. So I'm too nice. So that means that I have compassion for people and that I understand, and I don't want to argue with people over a bid. I go back to the bidding process for somebody. Now, if I bid a process, let's just say as a tradesman, I bid a process. I look at it. I look at raw cost of materials, time involved, and then the X factor of the variables that are unknown. I put together a bid. I pad it a little bit just to make sure, and then I give it to the client. That's what my guys do to me, whether they do it in 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or 2 days. Doesn't matter. They're doing the same process. We all are. I don't want to argue with him. I don't think that there's room because he put in his bid what he thought honestly he was doing. If someone's ripping me off, I won't even have a phone call back. I mean, or if I talk to them and say, I mean, are you serious? I just want to know because I'm going to put this as a line item to the client. Is this what you want me to represent? And they go, yep. I'm like, okay. If the client goes for it, that's great. If not, I'm going to go find somebody else. That's fine. Because like I said, I don't really argue with them about their prices because I don't like to be argued.
Right.
If I say to somebody, you know, it's X amount of dollars and they say, you know, can you lower it? I'm like, sure. Well, then why would they trust me from the beginning? Why didn't I give them that price in the first place?
Right.
You know, and I don't want to get into that. So I just say, not really. I mean, I gave you a bid against my bids and against my knowledge of what's going on. You know, sometimes I can save people money, but I don't know that until at the end of the job.
Since I've done this brand, certainly people, a lot of friends and stuff are always hitting me up. You know, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do, X, Y, Z? And it's always something different. And my biggest thing, not having the contractor background, is always like, I never know how much to charge somebody for something. And what ultimately ends up happening is I always am doing favors and stuff. And I always underprice, and my friends are thankful for that, obviously, because I'm doing work, for cheap. But for me, it's like, I think we'll get into that maybe in another topic. It'd be a great idea to just talk about, like, if you're doing this type of work for somebody else, how do you price your time? To that point, talking about today's topic with, DIY versus hiring out, what is your time worth? I think is a tremendous thing for a homeowner to consider. What's the opportunity cost? What are you giving up? Are you giving up time with your kids? Are you giving up, work to try and get this bathroom remodel or whatever it is that you're trying to do? Like, what is it that you're really
sanity
giving up? Yeah. And I encourage everybody to do it, because I think you learn a lot about yourself, and there's nothing quite as rewarding as that, like, tangible, I built this, it's done, look at it,
It also comes down to, there's an old expression, the devil's in the details. Everything to me is details. Should that grout line be 3/8 or a quarter? Should it be an 8? Should it not have anything? Should I keep that wainscot at 36, 42? I mean, it's all and it's all perspective, and it's all just an opinion,
Right.
So to me, that's the whole thing. So someone's hiring me for that reason. If you are doing it, you need to be the detail-oriented person. Mm-hmm. If you are running your own job as a DIYer, you have to do exactly what I do and make sure that the project runs smoothly and everything is concise. That's gonna make a project run super smooth. It's not. Then you always have, again, the variables. Is the guy showing up on time? Do you have guys on top of other trades? Did you back up other trades? Are things not done? Do you know how irritated my electrician comes when something is not done and he just drove from, a lot of my guys are obviously juggling jobs. They all are, my guys do really well doing what they do, and they're in demand. But like, if I don't have something prepped and ready and he just drove 45 minutes to my job site, he'll be like, oh, it's all right. I know it's not like, oh, it's all right. He's doing that because he works for me a lot and he's not going to yell at me, but he's not happy about it. I think forming a good crew and finding a good crew is, when my guys come on my job site, they're like, they hug each other. They know each other. If they haven't seen each other in a long time, it's like, oh, wow, how you been? How's the family? Oh, you just got a new house? That's great. Can I help you? Do you need some drywall? What do you need? Right. That to me is a great environment. I don't think a contractor has to be stodgy. I don't think we have to be considered, that guy. I'm kind of a hybrid. I'm a designer. I'm an earn as you learn, but I do have some formal training as well. I always tell people, I can build your house, but I can also pick your pillows. So it's really up to you how deep we want to go. There are contractors who are like, I don't pick paint, I don't do this, I don't do tile. I will give you your tradesman, I will run the job, and that's it. And that's fine. I give ideas. I'm not that way.
Going back to the communication thing, I think for a certain, like, if I was to be, looking for a contractor, for example, I would want to communicate that. Be like, if I'm like Tracy, I want to open up this kitchen, I want to open up this wall, and have kind of an open floor plan. But I don't really know how to do it, and I don't know design wise, like, you know, what would be best, that type of stuff. You would be like the perfect person for that for me, because I would be like, you know, I need some design input. I need to know how everything's going to flow. I need to know how everything's going to look. Whereas if maybe I've already like, these are my cabinets, this is what I want, and you already know, maybe you could just get a guy that's more like what you're saying, more a contractor who's just like, I'm going to be the project manager, oversee it. But
Sure,
you know, you're kind of a little bit more of your own designer and that kind of thing. So I think, you know, in choosing a contractor, I think knowing that, you know, maybe you want somebody who has a little bit more of an eye and also as a project manager,
or just cares.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, again, I'm not dogging my trade, but a lot of contractors just don't care. I mean, they want to get the job done and they want to move on to the next.
Right.
I have a tough time because 99% of my work is referral, and I'm very busy because, like I said, I'm detail oriented and I care about what I do. My guys are good tradesmen and things last for a long time. I'll tell you something that, you know, I tell DIYers. There's a lot of different avenues that you can go if you want to figure things out for yourself. The Office of Building and Safety, you can go there and pull a number just like I can, and you get 15 minutes at the desk with someone who's going to talk to you about the scope of project. You give them an address, you tell them what you want to do, and they'll tell you exactly what you need to do. So it's not like there's any hidden secrets, you know. Mm-hmm. Being an expediter and dealing with permits and trades and all that stuff is one thing, but finding scope and figuring out scope is a whole different thing.
In this backyard overhaul project that I've got going on, I initially hired the guys out to just do the block walls. And then I knew in design, because I like to previs everything, you know, I try to previs as much as possible so that I know, just because my mind works that way. I like to see it before. I knew I wanted these brick piers, and I was originally going to do them myself. You know, I was like, okay, you guys are coming in, going to do the block, and you're going to do all this stuff. And then as they got going, I was like, it will take me so long to do this. The scope of the project, like, yeah, I could do this, but I'll probably do one pier or one column
a week
for the next 8 weeks. And I'm going to lose my day. And they're already here. This is what they do. I was like, you know what? I'm going to eat it. I'm just going to pay the money. They're going to do all the masonry stuff, and I'm not even going to worry about it. I haven't regretted it yet. But, you know, in terms of, I might take some flack from it because I'm a DIY guy, you know, but scope, you know, it's what we're talking about. Is just the scope of the project was too big for me. These walls that I've got are like 4 foot high at the low end, and there's 2 of them, and they're both 80 plus feet. I mean, it would take me a year to try and do that.
We were talking about it before. It's knowing your limitations, you
right.
know, and not being ashamed of it. It's like, if you can't do something and you hire in an expert, or, you know, you decide to give your mason X amount more work, he's going to go, okay, and he'll just knock it out.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm already at the job. I don't have to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he's there. It's not like a big deal. He can
right.
just, you know, okay, so let me go get brick instead of just using, you know, cinder block.
Right.
I'll go get some brick for you. But that's the main thing. You know, it's like you were talking about your project that, you know, where's your limitation?
You mean with hiring versus doing stuff ourselves? Well, in our old house, I was a lot more open because I knew we wouldn't be there for a long time. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a good place to learn. Sure, why not? Like, let's figure it out here. Now we're in a home that is our forever home. So I want custom woodwork. I want things that are going to be there forever and things that make our home special. So I'm kind of like, let's paint. Let's do the finishing work. Let's put on hardware. But let's leave the interior construction to a professional. That's just how I work. My husband's great at doing like moldings and things like that. And we will throw our DIY skills into the decor because that will be ever changing. But for those types of things, I like to hire someone.
And I don't have any qualms about that. I think, like I said, I think ultimately it's really just about having a little bit of a background. You know, it's being able to do things that when something breaks, you can fix it. Or you know, if it's small scale. If it's a huge thing, yeah, I mean, hire somebody out if it's a specialty. You know, if it's HVAC or it's something that's like very dedicated, or electrical, if you don't feel like you can do it safely. I think safety is the other thing. Obviously, you have to really
Yes.
consider, certainly if you have, family, kids, pets.
Not necessarily cheaper to do things yourself. That's another thing. If you don't have the equipment that the professionals have, you're renting equipment, you're sometimes buying the wrong thing and then realizing it's the wrong thing, and then you can't take it back. There's so many things that a professional knows and does day in and day out that I think learning as you go can actually be really expensive sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, do you enjoy it? If you enjoy it, then by all means do it, but start small. Don't dive in head first and be like, I'm going to completely remodel my kitchen. I'm going to build the custom cabinets. I'm going to do, the tile. I'm going to do, coffered ceilings. I'm going to do the whole thing. And you have like next to no experience. It's just not going to come out the way that your grandiose vision in your head is laid out. Right. But if you start small, like doing trim, doing baseboards, and kind of work your way up and acquire tools over time, and then think about it, it's like, okay, I want to do this type of stuff more often. Okay, well then invest in the tools, invest in the knowledge, take some time, and just kind of build out your skill set over time, because nobody knows how to do everything. Like, you don't go to school and be like, oh, I know everything, and you jump into a house and you're like, I can build it from the ground up. There's a reason why there's all these specialty trades. Right. You can't know everything about everything. Right. And I don't claim to, but I know enough basics that I can save myself some money, I can fix things when they break, and I'm not afraid to tackle new challenges. That's really all that DIY comes down to. And being comfortable with what you get, and being like, yeah, I made some mistakes. Maybe it's not perfect, but can I live with it? Sure.
I think that the rooms in your home that are always evolving, like children's rooms are a good example, our playrooms, stuff that is going to evolve and change as the years go by. Those are great places to DIY and kind of test your skill set. The spaces, to me, like the bathrooms and the kitchen, the like hubs of the home that are there to last, that's when I feel like you bring someone in.
And to me, I think the worst place to start figuring out your DIY talents are when you're saw cutting floors and when you're laying down things that are permanent. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to try their hand at doing a concrete patio, I think it's great, as long as they don't mind jacking it up if they have a problem. That's when you get into issues. Are you doing things that are permanent over things that are temporary? If you're doing something that's permanent that can be changed, great. If you can adjust it, like you were saying, like woodworking and things that all it's going to cost you is some material. It's not going to cost you, you're not going to have to completely rip out something if it's incorrect. Or are you satisfied with small amounts of imperfection? That's, where is your eye? What's your detail sense? How far do you want to go? How deep do you want to dive?
Right. Nothing in my house is perfect. Nothing that I've built is perfect. There's always a tolerance. There's always an error margin, and it's like, okay, can I live with that error margin or can I not? It's like, can I look at it, like you're saying, to my eye and be comfortable in knowing that, I did my best with it and it looks pretty good and it's better than it was? Or is it like, that is just such an eyesore or whatever, I got to start over, Well, and, there's like 90% of what my eye catches, nobody else catches, because that's my job. My job is to catch everything. And there's also the thought of, don't hide a flaw, flaunt it. If it becomes a problem or a mistake, don't try to start covering it up. Figure out a way to incorporate it into your detail. There's solutions to every problem without ripping things out. You can always figure out ways. You might have to compromise on certain things, but there's no wrong thing about compromise. It happens. We're not perfect. Human beings make mistakes. My guys make mistakes. If my guys make mistakes, they eat it. But if a client makes a mistake on a design element and they want to change it, they can either compromise and go, you know what, I can live with that, or let's tear it out and do it again. Either way, as long as they're happy at the end of the day, that's my main goal. You're going to ultimately have something that comes up during the project that's going to change some element of what you were thinking. So I think as a homeowner, you need to be a little bit flexible and understand that is a possibility, and just be able to communicate that with, if you are hiring, communicate that with your contractor and be like, look, this is what I really want. I hope that we can get it, but be receptive to them saying, look, if we got to do that, we got to change this, we got to move this, we got to do that, we got to do this. This is how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Do you still really want to do it?
Well, and does your, this is, and I hate saying this to clients, but I mean, does your budget meet your expectation? And that's just the truth. Do you have, caviar dreams in a fish roe budget? It's hard, I mean, people want a certain thing, but are you willing to pay for it? Are you willing to get the $500 a day finish carpenter, or are you getting a guy for $250 that does it as a framer, but he knows how to do finish work? There's a big difference. You
did a lot of shows, design shows.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you deal with that when you're on a very tight schedule, you're on a production schedule, and when you guys have to wrap, you have to wrap? Were there details that weren't always tied up that kind of...
All the time.
And how did you feel about that?
Not good.
Yeah.
But, again, on a couple of my shows, I work with designers whose scope didn't meet their time frames.
Mm-hmm.
They were a little bit overexcited when they decided to design something. If I was working as a carpenter,
Mm-hmm.
on Design on a Dime, I didn't have the final say on a lot of things. I was working as a party of a team of 3. So if I did something that I didn't feel was right, I would tell them. I wouldn't, they were like, well, I would have producers, no disrespect. Why don't you just put that together out of MDF and paint it? I'm like, because it's going in someone's home and it needs to be finished.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to put glass on top of it. Well, it's not in the budget. Well, then we need to figure it out, because I'm not going to give them a painted piece of MDF as a table.
I always wonder what people on shows are actually left with. Like, what stays in their home? What's staged? Like,
what gets dumped? I mean, it's true. It's I mean, if we're being honest about things in design shows, I'd say on Design on a Dime, I did 145 shows
mm-hmm.
on Design on a Dime. I'd say 80% of them were, I'd say we hit it out of the park. But there was that 20% that just wasn't.
You left feeling a little...
Yeah, whatever it was. I mean, whether it was client dissatisfaction, production problems, a carpenter didn't have we were being over exuberant with what we thought we could do. Like on my show, we didn't have elves. We had us, It was like, I started out at the beginning, it was us and the guys from Trading Spaces and Ty, and I remember seeing Ty Pennington at I would see him at an event or something, and we would like go over stuff, and he'd be like, oh yeah. I remember being in New York, and I was on a job, I was on a family visit, and I'm seeing one of the carpenters, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but she was a female carpenter at Trading Spaces. She's working on a chop saw in the rain under a pop-up on West 79th Street on the Upper West Side. And I'm like, hey, from Design on a Dime, she's like, you get it.
Bless it.
You get it, don't you? And I'm like, totally. She's like, rock on.
No show in the history of the world has given me more anxiety than Trading Spaces. It was like, honestly, the most terrifying, exhilarating show ever on the air, I feel
it's
like.
It's on again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's back on.
They would spray paint carpet. Like,
oh, I know.
They would hot glue flowers to the wall. Like,
yeah.
It was great TV, but I always wondered about what the people left in that situation were feeling.
I think that I don't think that things always last. I mean, I can't imagine, we used to do a room in 14 hours, I mean, reasonably speaking, sometimes we do OT and, we would do it, but, and we would have obviously time to build projects outside, and we would do what's called interstitials, and we would do little build outs, and, we would basically leave a couple of steps left, or you would have a project that was partially left. So I had a beautiful shop over in Silver Lake that if I could knock out furniture, I would knock out furniture. I mean, I would just build it. If they would allow me to not have, or we got to the point where it was kind of before the whole GoPro thing. So they would give us cameras and we would, mount a camera, and I had a tripod, and I would try to shoot everything. And so at least they had some steps so they could justify that to the network, being like, we were able to do this because we did have him do this. But I wasn't willing to compromise everything about who I was as a builder. Like, mm-hmm. I'm a builder, that's what I do. I build furniture from scratch with my hands. And I guess it all comes down to integrity, and networks, they don't always care about that. They want television,
Right.
and they're not the ones getting the phone call at the end of the day. We are. Or the hate emails, or the nasty. There used to be these, what were they called? The chats, the chat rooms. Oh my God, they were awful. I used to see. I mean,
that's YouTube comments now.
Oh yeah, that's YouTube comments. I mean, it's like I was like,
why you blink so much?
Oh my God, don't you cannot look at the comments most of the time.
No,
or certainly you can't take them to heart.
Oh my God, they used to drive my designers crazy, and I didn't get as bad because I was just doing my thing, and they were like, oh, he's kind of too handsome to be building. I'm like, if that's your worst comment, God bless you. Yeah. It's all good.
Wink.
Yeah.
Part of this podcast is to talk about real things, like the TV world. I'm from it. You're from it. We have that background. There are certain things that are done for TV, and I think ultimately people see these things and then they get these grandiose expectations about, what they can do for what budget and stuff. And it depends. I mean, LA, you're not going to be able to do the type of work that, you see somewhere in, the Midwest somewhere. You're like, oh, they bought this house for $150,000, put $50,000 in it, and now it's, this super luxury house.
How about just $300,000? How about they bought a house for $300K?
Yeah, I mean, the pricing is different around the country, and it's like, I've talked to some TV production companies, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't really do shows in LA because it looks like it's a barrier to entry for most people. They're like, what? They see this price tag on how much stuff costs, and it's like, yeah, I mean, in different parts of the country, in different cities and stuff costs different amounts. The cost of living is certainly higher, and it's different everywhere.
Back to the defense of back to defending designers on television. I mean, there's and obviously this too. Colors look different. When you color correct something, things look different. 4K has completely killed the television design world, because you see every little speck. It's like, oh my gosh, I see every little line in that. It's like you can't fake it anymore. Everything has to be true blue. So I think in defense of designers, what people are seeing on television is not always representative of what their people are getting at home. It's generally not as good as what they're seeing. Back in the day, it was great. You just squint and walk away. That was like, you were saying that I'm a production designer. It's true. We used to go up to jobs, go like this, and be like, perfect. Because that's all it was, right. Because it was film. Film added grain, it added quality. Now that everybody's shooting in 4K and flat video and everything is, resolution is ridiculous. It's different. Right. I would be terrified to be doing design shows right now just because of the expectation of producers and if everybody's like, micro managing and picking apart projects you're doing, I mean, it would drive me nuts.
And the timeline isn't realistic. It takes time for things to dry.
Yeah.
It takes time for things to be put together. And it's just, that's what it always baffles me when it will be like 14 hours later and you're like, wow, Chip and Joanna built a whole new house. It's really exciting, but how? How does... I don't know.
It's the TV world. It's different, and people just have to realize that there's realistic expectations and there's what you see on TV. That's really all it comes down to. I think people just, get brainwashed a little bit by some of the stuff they see out there.
Yeah.
And I think too, in terms of DIY and stuff, you see a lot of stuff as well. And I see a lot of stuff out there that's kind of like has a DIY on it. DIY name tag on it, and then I see some other stuff, and you're like, man, there's such a discrepancy between DIYs depending on who's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was known for a long time as a DIY expert. I mean, I go on television shows, I do this, I go in symposiums, I speak at home shows about DIY stuff. I know a lot about DIY stuff. I am a DIY person. I'm also a professional in my field. The only difference between a DIY person and myself is how long it takes and how much you spend. Mm-hmm. That's all. I mean, and it's having the knowledge and the experience. If you do something as a DIY person, you're going to gain experience, even if you make mistakes. Mistakes mean experience, and you won't do it the next time the same way. I have no problem with that.
Mistake. Yeah, it's just another word for experience, really.
It really is. It's like they talked about, doctors have a practice. It's not called a practice for no reason, They're constantly, everything with a doctor is going off of experience and intuition. It's the same with what we do. I mean, when I look at something in proportion and scale, it's intuition. Do I have a sense about it? Do I look at something and know it's right? To me, design, it's funny. I will say it is perspective, but there is also right and wrong about things. If that's too high, for some people that might be fine. I go into homes all the time and I see people hanging pictures like 8 feet off the ground. In a common world, 5 foot is the marker for a middle of a photograph or of anything of a focal point. That's just a given. It's history has proven it. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It just means it becomes a starting point. Half the thing I think about design and when people do it themselves is you have to make a decision. You have to make a choice and then follow through with your choice. You can make a mistake and you can change it. If you paint a room and you don't like the color, paint it back. If you hang a picture and it's too high, lower it. If you have a spackle hole, fill it and repaint it. It's not the end of the world. The only way you learn these things is by trying. I don't want people to think that they have to always hire a contractor. There are nice ways to play in the sandbox together as a homeowner with contractors. You can pick and choose. Not everybody has enough money to have everything done full tilt boogie by a contractor. And I get that, And like we were going back to the question, is there a way to work with a homeowner on a project? And I mean, I certainly think there is, as long as everybody is considerate of everybody's time.
The guys laying the block, for my retaining wall, my intention was that I was going to be involved in the whole time and help them and do all this stuff. But what I found was that these guys, there was just a team of 3 guys, and they just had a system, and for me to interject myself into their system screwed it up. It's like I was doing more harm than good by being involved.
You're slowing them down.
I would slow them down. They knew what each other was going to do ahead of what the other guy was going to do. And they've done this a million times. So for me to put myself into that role is like, I'm inhibiting them. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? I just got to step back and just be like, let them do their thing. And fortunately, it worked out for both of us because I ended up having other stuff going on anyway. But I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to let them do their thing because I'm just slowing them down, and it's not worth either of our time for me to try and get involved. I asked questions, and I was able to interject what I wanted, and I was like, why are you doing this? What are you doing here? Just so I can get a little bit of more knowledge about that process. But I stayed out of the way, and I just filmed it. I just put a camera on them, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I film this and take care of it? And
just shoot me from this side. This is my good side.
It's the same thing I think with, it's babysitting. That's what I do. I'm a professional babysitter of guys that are supposed to be able to wipe their own noses. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. It's catching mistakes before they become bigger mistakes. The little teeny details that if you don't catch can become monumental at the end. Huge. So that's things like that. And if homeowners are willing to sit there and remeasure and take a level to things and take charge of their project and take charge of their life and babysit and make sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, there's no problem. You can do everything yourself. Mm-hmm. It's when you don't do that and you expect guys to wipe their own noses all the time and check. And not that tradesmen mean to do problems. Sometimes they're just rushed. Mm-hmm. Sometimes honestly, sometimes they just don't care.
Yeah, and sometimes mistakes happen. To the best of us. So
absolutely, unequivocally.
Well, we're going to take some voicemails coming up. Do you want to stick around and answer some questions?
Sure, why not?
Cool. You guys have called in, and we're going to answer a few of the voicemails right now. If you guys want to call in and leave us a question at any time, you can call us at 978-709-1040. Just leave us a voicemail, and we'll do our best to answer it on the show. I got a few lined up here. Feel free to interject if you have an answer for them.
I've got a problem with my shower. It is disgusting. It feels like no matter how hard I scrub the tile, this black and orange stain won't come off of the tile. And frankly, tired of looking at it. Tired of looking down at grossness while I'm trying to get clean. How the heck can I get a clean shower that's going to be easy to maintain?
Well,
Clean shower question.
I think the first thing they got to figure out is whether it's mold seeping from the back, which in a shower obviously is definitely a possibility. But you can also try vinegar.
My old bathroom that I recently remodeled, my Jack and Jill bathroom, had a similar thing. And I think what he's referring to is the transition between like the tile and the tub. What typically happens is, you've got all the moisture and everything running down the wall. And when it hits that grout line or caulk line or whatever at the tub, you end up getting that kind of black, dirt and stuff. It just builds up over time. And if you're in an older home, I mean, I scrubbed the heck out of that stuff back in the day, like before I completely gutted the bathroom and redid it.
I remember seeing that. You did a great job, by the way.
There's just thank you. There's just no way to get rid of that. So the only thing that I would suggest, and if that's what he's talking about, take out that grout line and redo the grout line, or, use some tub and tile caulk and redo that transition, because that's the only way you're going to get, make it look white again.
We had a similar issue with our floors in our new house, and that's because when the investor did the flip, he never sealed the grout. So we actually got it steam cleaned, which pulled all that gunk out of there, and then we made sure it was sealed, and it hasn't come back. And yes, vinegar solves everything in life.
It really does.
Most of life's problems.
White vinegar is like the best cleaning supply on earth.
Oh yeah, we have vinegar, 50-50 vinegar to water. I mean, my house half the time smells like vinegar because my son does something, he spills something. It's like strawberries on the couch, vinegar, saturate, let it lay.
Yeah, it's also a natural ant abatement.
It is
remedy. It doesn't keep them away, but it drives them away from certain areas for a while. So it does work. It works well for everything.
The big Ghostbuster packs full of vinegar.
Blast it all out of there.
Out.
Hopefully that answers a little bit of that question. I hope that if you want to send us a picture, you can always email us or whatever, and I can maybe give you a little bit more clarification on it. But based on what he's saying, I think that should kind of address it.
And we don't need a picture of him in the shower. Just the
shower. No, I don't need him in the shower. Just the tub, just the tile or whatever's dirty, but we don't need you. So you can keep that to yourself. All right, let's fire up another one here.
Yeah, I have a home improvement question. So I might have gotten drunk last night and accidentally punched a hole in my drywall, and I was just wondering how I can patch that up quickly before my roommates get home. Thank you.
Well, long term, I'd say AA. But on a short term,
you might want to seek some anger management classes.
I'm just saying.
Find healthier alternatives to let out your aggression. But I mean, it happens.
That's super easy. I mean, they have patch kits at Home Depot. And it's super easy. I mean, that's not a big deal. You can fix that, after dry time and everything. It all depends, of course, if you do have that texture on your walls.
Yeah, if you got the orange peel. But they have orange peel stuff in a can.
They do.
And it actually works.
And it stinks to high heaven.
It does, but it works actually pretty well.
It does. You just have to, you got to be liberal with it.
Yeah, you got to be liberal with it, and you got to feather it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you try to just
do big areas.
Yeah, big. If you try to do just that spot, you're going to end up with this weird Frankenstein looking toad skin thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's a difficult one.
I've done a drywall patching video. So I'll direct you to that, but
shameless plug.
But also patching is easy, but when it comes to mudding and taping and doing whole rooms, I've done it a bunch of times, but I've never done it well. If there's one thing that I do hate and I will hire out for, it's drywall.
Yeah.
I despise drywall. I've made it abundantly clear in all of my content that I despise doing drywall. But I'm just not good at it. I've tried mudding. I've watched a ton of videos. I've attempted it. I've done I've practiced a ton. I just don't have a touch for it. Yeah, check out that video and also get some help. Because that one, you might want to.
You know what they say? You don't have to get here, but get help somewhere.
So I have this brick wall that's in the back in my garden. The people that before me own the house put it right by where the sprinkler system is, and the wall, it looks like it's tipping. I don't know what to do. I think I may have a year or two left before it tumbles over. Can you help, please?
This one,
I'm going to let a DIY guy handle this one.
I think I have an answer to this, or I don't necessarily have an answer to how to fix it, but I do have an answer to why it's happening, because I was talking to the mason that was doing the retaining walls in my house, and apparently this is extremely common. He says that...
Gravity?
Yeah. He has a lot of fix-it calls like this. And ultimately what it comes down to is that these block walls, a lot of them from the 40s and 50s and stuff, and 60s even, he was saying that they just never put legitimate footings in for these walls. And so what ends up happening over time is, like, as the soil settles and, sounds like water is getting in there and loosening up the soil, and these walls are, just start to tip like this. And so ultimately, I don't really know the fix for it, other than maybe you can brace the wall up and somehow try and put a new legitimate footing underneath it, somehow jack it up or what. But a lot of those walls in that case, if they don't have legit footings, like 2 foot by 2 foot kind of big footings beneath them, they probably don't have rebar in them either. And so you may just be putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
I think in this woman's case, the best thing she could probably do would be to brace the wall. And you could do it as a permanent fix. You can put a small pad and get a piece of, number 4 rebar, and you can actually put a plate up and brace it, and it will not fall. Pretty much, you've got a good 10 years out of it. It doesn't look attractive. It's a trip zone, and it's not the most sane thing to do, but you could also spend 10 grand and fix the wall and tear it down. That's the only way, in my mind, to fix the wall.
In this case, I would look for a mason that, would come in and give you options, because
it's a pretty dangerous thing to let go.
Well, it's not something that I think most people are going to do themselves. I just don't think there's not an easy fix for it. I think it's going to be involved, and I think probably could be potentially expensive to set, depending on the size of it. So that would be my suggestion. This one I pulled specifically for you.
Did you?
Yeah. Let's see how you feel about it.
I can't wait.
When you're married to a general contractor and you have 4 projects started, how do you get them to finish at least one?
Honey, is that you?
The cobbler's son never wears shoes, as we say. I literally have been staring at a toilet paper holder in a bathroom in my house for like a month, because I just keep on forgetting, and it's too late, and this, and I had to redo the wall and this, but whatever. And my wife's like, she's been very nice about it, but I'm like, I know, I got to get it done. I'm actually gonna do it today. I swear to God. It's prioritizing. That's the main thing. It's whether it's a contractor, whether you're a DIY or you're a homeowner, you have to learn to prioritize what's most important. If you start a project before you finish a project, all you're gonna do is cause yourself aggravation. So, in my mind, if you do have a bunch of projects up in the air, just stop, look, and listen. Take things down. Start categorizing what's most important to you, how quickly things are going to happen, and if there's a way that you can do it in a nice way. And I think maybe if you lean on your husband and tell him you won't feed him, maybe that might help as well.
I'm super guilty of this. My wife will attest to all the little projects that I've started. I get like 99% of the way through something, and then a lot of the time I'm just like, okay, I'll finish that up later, And it's something usually that probably will only take like a couple hours, to finish it up. But it's like mentally I've already moved on. And then so what ends up happening is I accrue all these like little things. What I have started to do though, and I will say, I've started to make days like where I'm working on the house where I have like a laundry list of unfinished projects, and I have a day set aside, and I just start going through the unfinished project. It's
tie-up day.
Yeah, it's kind of a loose ends day.
My wife's family has a house in Michigan, and she goes away for usually 3 weeks or a month with my son. And I stay, and I pop in for like 10 days or something, whenever I can get away. But like that's like my time. And she sent me a list this past summer that was like literally like 8 things, and they were pretty big projects. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get on it. And I did every one of them. And I didn't even get like the accolades I thought I was going to get.
Really?
Yeah, it was like expected. Like,
Finally.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much.
I know the language because I speak it.
It was more like, I was so proud of myself. I was like, see that cock job? I did all that. See, I had one of those things that guy was talking about. I had to pull out all the caulk in my son's bathroom, and I had to redo all the caulk. And it wasn't easy because the guy did some like rock hard caulking. So I did it. I had to like dig it out, and I had to get the tool and the thing. And she's like, "Oh, that looks nice."
Oh, darn.
Looks nice.
Yeah,
That's it.
I get that too. It's like I think that's the other thing. Like when you're like expected to be able to handle all that stuff. My wife does a great job. She does like give me the support and all that stuff. But occasionally I'll put all this effort into something, and then she's like, looks good.
Because you make it look so easy, you guys. That's why. You make it look so easy that we don't even think that it's hard work for you.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better? No.
No. Well, it does. It does sort of. I mean, it does, because you're absolutely right. You know, it's funny. It's like,
I mean, it's what you do.
yeah. I mean, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and she takes care of my son. And like, if I had to spend the amount of time that she spends with my son, I would go nuts. You know, my son's favorite thing is to say is, "Daddy's working." I'm like, well, Daddy's working because he's making a living and all that stuff, and he doesn't understand. But you know, it's a very, you know, we all have very hard jobs. I think the main thing in life is that we all want to be appreciated.
You got to give and receive.
Yeah, exactly. You guys.
And I think you, like, in general in the home, when it comes to overwhelm, even if it's laundry or anything that you have to do where your list becomes super overwhelming or projects become open-ended, I think if you set the boundary, I'm not going to start something else until I finish this. I'm not going to put a new load of laundry in the washer until I put away what's in the dryer. Little things, you can dig yourself out of these big, like, overwhelm.
See, I don't have that discipline.
It is a discipline, and especially when you have a creative mind, like I
bounce around like a grasshopper. I'm like, oh, I'm over here. I'm like a dog chasing a ball. I'm like, oh, that looks good. Oh, I'm gonna do this right
Squirrel.
now. Oh, yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Squirrel.
I'm calling because I have my lovely 1910 Craftsman home, and although some things have been updated, unfortunately the lovely AC unit that's working nonstop is losing the majority of its energy out the front door. There's this awesome gap between the front door and the base of the floor. As you can imagine, nothing is quite straight in this home. So help me save on my electricity bill and keep my house cold. Thanks so much.
I think this is a pretty common thing, certainly in LA. Maybe not so much in East Coast and stuff because of snow. And if you have that issue, you recognize it pretty quickly. I think you could probably fix it relatively easily. Just, get yourself a door sweep. They sell them at, any of the big box stores. You can install them on there pretty easily. They're adjustable. Put a couple screws in it. They're like, I don't know, rubber or vinyl. Or
And we're talking about R value in a home,
right.
And she's in a 1910 Craftsman, and she thinks she's losing all her R value underneath the door. It has nothing to do with the completely single pane glass windows,
or the complete lack of insulation in the walls,
complete lack of insulation in the walls, or the floor that's completely seeping. But I think that there's when you're looking at something like that and you're overactive AC unit, you have to look at the whole picture. And yes, I think a sweep is a Band-Aid, but I don't necessarily think that's going to change the whole thing. I think she needs to look at the whole house,
right,
and sort of come up with a game plan, whether it's let's replace these windows a couple at a time. Let's find out. Let's maybe we actually take the door off and we fill it with some wood and we actually get it within an 1/8 inch tolerance to the floor. Is the door weather stripped? Like you said, back east, people know in 15 minutes if they're having air because the cold air rushes in.
Yeah, it flies in.
Oh yeah, it flies in. I mean, we're all from the East Coast, so but that's the first thing. It's like, identifying your problem is half of the battle. You could have people coming in all day long trying to figure out where the ants are coming in, but until you actually see the trail, you never
right.
know.
My house is a little newer than that. It's in the 1930s, but just the complete lack of insulation. Like my HVAC bills are insane, and it's been like an ongoing thing for me to just try and battle it. Because yeah, the walls don't have insulation in them, and it's like, okay, how are you going to insulate all these walls? It's a big, long ranch, so it's not like you can just, So every time I remodel a room, it's like I'm adding insulation into there, I'm making this room good, moving on to the next project, changing out the windows, all that stuff.
And like you said, there are ways to do projects like that where you don't have to tear out. You can drill holes and pump insulation in. You can do ceilings. And in attic spaces and crawl spaces, it changes dramatically your bills when you do things like that. I've even had people in cold, back east, it's not uncommon to plastic up windows for the season.
There's problems everywhere. You're on the East Coast, you're dealing with, certainly where my family's from, you're dealing with snow 6 months a year. Here you're dealing with heat. It's all perspective and how you look at it and what you can handle.
I know people always say, it's like, oh, you don't have any problems in Cali. It's like, yeah, we do. We don't have cold.
The earth shakes.
But the other thing is I chose to not live in cold weather anymore.
Right.
It's like, it's a choice. I mean, my friends from back home wear it like a badge of honor, and I'm like, it's great for you. I think it's great. I love the fact that you live where you live. I can come visit you. I just don't want to be there all the time.
No.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, if you're active outdoors in the winter, it's like one of the best things. If you like it, it's great. If you just don't like the cold, then find somewhere else. But then you got to deal with those problems.
Life is choices. You could either do it yourself or hire a contractor.
Exactly. Sure. David, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come out. Really enjoyed our conversation. It's great to meet you in person after following you on Instagram.
Thank you.
And I think you shared a ton of information that's really helpful for homeowners and for myself. I learned a lot.
I did too.
I think that the main thing is that always don't be scared. Don't be scared of doing it yourself. Don't be scared of hiring someone out if you feel that you're not up for the task. Make sure you guys follow David on Instagram and on social media and keep up with what he's up to. What is it? It's at David Scheinkoff, right? It's at David Scheinkoff, and my website is www.davidscheinkoff.com. Thank you guys so much for watching the inaugural episode of the How to Home podcast, or listening to it however you're choosing to consume it. Make sure you guys rate us on your various podcast listening apps. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time. The How To Home podcast is brought to you by FilterBuy.com, your one-stop direct-to-consumer replacement air filter brand, and is produced in collaboration by Amassed Media Group, LLC, and Intelligent Arts and Artists. The show is executive produced by George Ruiz and Aaron Massey.